You can't pour from an empty cup, and other lies. I want to start with a phrase you've probably heard so many times it's stopped registering. You can't love others until you love yourself. It's on mugs, it's in therapy offices, people say it with genuine care. And I think it does real harm to real people. Here's something I find useful to know. This phrase has a history. It didn't arrive from some ancient well of wisdom. It came from a 1956 book by Erich Fromm, who actually wrote something much more interesting, that love of self and love of others aren't opposites. They feed each other. Then the self-help boom of the 70s and 80s got hold of it and flattened it into a prerequisite. Fix yourself first, then you are allowed in. If you grew up in that era, and a lot of us did, you absorbed that as common sense before you ever had reason to question it. For what it's worth, Kristen Neff, one of the leading researchers on self-compassion, has said the psychological community misread the data on self-esteem entirely. You got it wrong. Studies show that, yes, people with higher self-esteem tend to have better relationships, but the reverse is equally true. Being in a good relationship raises self-esteem. The arrow runs both ways. Not because it's entirely wrong, but because of what it implies. That love is something you unlock after sufficient work. But look around. Parents who hate themselves show up for their kids anyway. People in the middle of a depressive episode hold space for their friends. People who have spent decades believing they are fundamentally wrong stay. They stay loyal. They stay present. The love is already there. What the phrase is actually trying to describe, clumsily, is that unresolved experiences create patterns. Anxious attachment, self-abandonment, an unerring ability to find people who confirm your worst suspicions about yourself. Those patterns cause friction. Bowlby and Ainsworth spent careers documenting exactly how. But friction is not the same thing as absence of love. That's a nervous system doing what nervous systems do. Different problem, solvable problem. What the phrase actually does in practice is give people who already feel inadequate a reason to stay isolated. You're not ready yet. Keep working. Come back when you're fixed. So they keep their distance. They do their inner work alone. They call it self-awareness. Sometimes that's just staying alone and calling it something more dignified. Because here's what tends to get left out. A lot of people find their way to self-worth not before connection, but through it. You show up consistently. You don't fall apart when it's hard. You discover, through your own behavior, that you are more capable than you believed. That's not a lesser path. For many people, it's the only path that actually works. Connection isn't the reward you collect after doing enough work on yourself. For most people, it's where the work actually happens. Which brings me to the other side of this, because the people most likely to use this phrase to keep themselves at arm's length from connection are often the ones quietly pouring themselves out for everyone around them. Now let's talk about the flip side, because a lot of people with food struggles are extraordinary at loving others. Not just loving, caregiving, showing up, anticipating needs, being the one who holds everything together. I want to make a distinction. Caregiving flows from a full cup. You have capacity, so you give. It's grounded, sustainable. Caretaking flows from fear. Fear of what happens if you stop. Fear that your value disappears the moment you're not needed. Caretaking is compulsive, it depletes, and it keeps your gaze permanently pointed outward. Because here's the thing about looking outward all the time. It means you don't have to look inward. And looking inward at the exhaustion, the resentment, the parts of yourself you've been ignoring for years, that can feel unsurvivable. So you keep moving, you keep giving, you keep looking out. And the body, needing something that replenishes, turns to food. Here's where it gets personal. When I was a girl, someone called me a whale. I was young enough that I didn't have the language for how that landed. But my nervous system understood it perfectly. You are not enough as you are. You will need to earn your place. So I did what made sense. I started doing other kids' homework. I made myself useful. I became the person who helped, who showed up, who could be counted on. And it worked. I got belonging. I got proximity to people. I got evidence that I mattered. The problem is that that kind of belonging is load bearing. You have to keep doing to keep receiving. And somewhere in your nervous system, you know that. So you never stop. Dr. Gabor Mate calls this the attachment authenticity split. When you learn early that being loved and being yourself cannot coexist, you choose love every time. You become who others need you to be. You give what others need you to give. And you get so good at it that eventually it stops feeling like a strategy and starts feeling like a personality. But it's not a personality. It's a nervous system that learned one move and has been running it ever since. Your worth isn't something you earn. Here's something a lot of us carry without ever saying it out loud. I'm worth something because of what I do for other people. Not what I am, what I do. So you keep doing, you keep proving. You overextend, you overgive. You take the last shift, you answer the call at midnight. And somewhere in the middle of all that generosity, you stop registering your own hunger, your own fatigue, your own need for comfort. Food doesn't ask anything of you. Food doesn't need you to be okay first. Food is there at midnight, when everyone else has gone to sleep, when you're finally alone with all the things you've been carrying. That's not weakness. That's an intelligent nervous system finding the only reliable available source of comfort in a life organized entirely around giving comfort to others. The food isn't the problem. The food is the signal. It's telling you that somewhere along the way, you stopped being on your own list. And here's the neuroscience part. James Cohn, director of the Virginia Affective Neuroscience Laboratory, has spent 25 years studying human brains, alone versus connected. His research is called social baseline theory, and it turned everything upside down. Everyone assumed that being alone was neutral, the baseline, that connection was the variable. He found the opposite. Social connection is the baseline. Aloneness is the stressor. When you're with someone you trust, your brain does less work to manage threat, less vigilance, less bracing. The nervous system shares the load. Neuroscientist Sarah Payton has a name for what happens when we face activation without that support. She calls it alarmed aloneness, being activated and alone with that activation, with no one to help carry it. When you're with someone you trust, your brain does less work to manage threat, less vigilance, less bracing. The nervous system shares the load. But if you spent your life being the one who provides safety for everyone else, while quietly believing you don't deserve it in return, your nervous system never gets to stand down. It's on all the time. And a nervous system that's on all the time needs regulation. Your biology is not broken. It's doing exactly what biology does when a social creature is chronically alone with their own activation. So what does this mean for you? A few things worth sitting with. The care you give others is real. It counts. You are not wrong for loving people fiercely. And the care you give cannot fully substitute for the care you need to receive. Your nervous system knows the difference. You don't have to be fixed before you deserve connection. You deserve it right now, in this exact, unfinished, still figuring it out version of yourself. Turning inward isn't abandoning the people you love. It's how you stop running on fumes. The food will keep doing its job until something else is available to do that job. That something else, for most people, is connection. Real, reciprocal, allowed to be messy connection. You were never broken. You were biological. And you were doing the most human thing possible, finding comfort where you could, in a life where comfort wasn't reliably coming from the direction it should have. The question isn't, why can't I stop? The question is, what does this part of me need that food has been generous enough to try to provide? That question has an answer, and it's not a diet.